The storm had been raging for 3 hours when Daniel Carter heard the sound. At first, he thought it was just another piece of debris hitting his workshop door. The wind had been violent enough to tear branches from the old oak tree in his yard. But then it came again. Softer, more deliberate, almost hesitant. Daniel set down the picture frame he'd been repairing. A hobby that kept his hands busy during the long, empty evenings, and walked to the side entrance of his converted barn workshop. The rain was deafening against the metal roof, drowning out almost everything else. He opened the door and froze. A child stood there, drenched to the bone. A boy, maybe 9 or 10 years old, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his thin jacket doing absolutely nothing to protect him from the November cold. The kid was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering audibly. In his arms, he clutched a backpack that looked like it had been through a war. "Mister," the boy's voice was barely audible over the storm, "I saw your light on. Can I just wait here until the rain stops? I promise I won't touch anything. I can sit in the corner. You won't even know I'm here." Daniel's heart clenched. The boy wasn't asking for help. He was apologizing for existing. "Son, how long have you been out in this?" Daniel asked, kneeling down to the boy's eye level, not caring that the rain was now soaking him too. Since this afternoon, I think. Maybe longer." The boy's lips had a blue tinge that made Daniel's stomach drop. "My stepdad said I had to leave. He said if I came back, he'd call the police on me for trespassing." "Trespassing? In your own home?" The boy shrugged, a gesture far too world-weary for someone his age. "He said it's not my home anymore. Not since Mom died last month. He said he only tolerated me because of her, and now there's no reason to keep pretending." Daniel felt rage bloom in his chest, hot and fierce, but he pushed it down. This child didn't need his anger right now. He needed warmth, safety, and someone to tell him that the world wasn't entirely made of monsters. "What's your name?" Daniel asked gently. Marcus Webb." "Well, Marcus, I'm Daniel, and you're not sitting in any corner of my workshop. You're coming inside my house where it's warm. We'll get you dry clothes, hot food, and then we'll figure this out. Okay?" Marcus's eyes widened with something between hope and terror. "You're not going to call the police?" "Not unless you want me to, but I am going to call someone who can help. First, though, let's get you warm before you catch pneumonia." Daniel grabbed his coat from the hook by the door and wrapped it around Marcus's thin shoulders. The boy practically disappeared in it. As they walked the short distance from the workshop to the house, Daniel's mind was already racing through what he needed to do. Inside, Daniel's kitchen was modest but warm. He immediately turned up the heat and grabbed the spare blankets he kept in the hall closet, a habit from the days when his own son, Tommy, had friends sleeping over almost every weekend. "Bathrooms down the hall," Daniel said, handing Marcus a pile of clothes. "These were my son's. They'll be too big, but they're warm and dry. Take a hot shower as long as you need. When you're done, come back here and we'll talk." Marcus looked at the clothes like they were made of gold. "Your son won't mind?" Daniel's throat tightened. "No, son. He won't mind." While Marcus showered, Daniel did 3 things. First, he made hot chocolate, the real kind with melted chocolate and whole milk, not the instant powder. Second, he heated up the beef stew he'd made earlier in the week. Third, he called his neighbor Patricia Morrison. Patricia was a retired family court judge who'd lived next door for 15 years. She'd been Daniel's rock after the accident that took both his wife Sarah and his son Tommy 3 years ago. If anyone would know how to help Marcus without making things worse, it would be her. Patricia, I need your help. A boy just showed up at my workshop, and the situation is... He quickly explained what Marcus had told him. Don't call the police yet, Patricia said immediately. Let me make some calls. In the meantime, get his full story, any documentation he has, and keep him warm and fed. I'll be over in 20 minutes. Marcus emerged from the bathroom looking like a different child. The shower had brought some color back to his face, and Daniel's old sweatpants and hoodie, though comically oversized, were clearly the warmest clothes the boy had worn in days. Sit, Daniel said, gesturing to the kitchen table. He placed a steaming bowl of stew and a mug of hot chocolate in front of Marcus. Eat slowly. Your stomach's probably not used to much food. Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He ate with the kind of desperate hunger that told Daniel this probably wasn't the first meal the boy had missed. But he did eat slowly, carefully, like someone who'd learned the hard way what happens when you eat too fast on an empty stomach. Marcus, Daniel said gently, sitting across from him, I need you to tell me everything. Start from the beginning. When did your mom pass away? Marcus's hands tightened around the mug. October 15th. Car accident. She was coming home from her night shift at the hospital. A drunk driver ran a red light. I'm so sorry, son. My stepdad, Rick, he wasn't at the funeral. Said he had to work. But I heard him on the phone telling someone he was glad she was gone because now he could finally live his life without her baggage. Marcus's voice was hollow. I think he meant me. I'm the baggage. You are not baggage, Daniel said firmly. You're a person. A kid who deserves love and safety. What happened after the funeral? Things got bad. Rick started drinking more. He'd always been kind of mean, but Mom kept him in check. After she died, Marcus trailed off, staring into his hot chocolate. He started saying I was worthless, that I was eating food he paid for, using electricity he paid for, taking up space in his house. This morning, he told me to pack my stuff and get out. Said he was done playing happy family. Did he hurt you? Daniel asked carefully. Marcus pulled up his sleeve, revealing bruises in various stages of healing. Sometimes, Mom tried to stop him, but after she died, there was nobody to stop him anymore. Daniel felt that rage again, white-hot and demanding, but he breathed through it. Marcus, I'm going to help you, but I need to know, do you have any other family? Grandparents? Aunts? Uncles? Anyone? Marcus shook his head. Mom was an only child. Her parents died before I was born. My real dad left when I was a baby. Mom said he didn't want kids. Rick was the only family we had, and... He laughed bitterly. Look how that turned out. The doorbell rang. Patricia had arrived, and she'd brought backup. Her friend Helen Chong, a social worker who specialized in emergency child placement. Over the next 2 hours, they gathered Marcus's story in detail. Helen took photos of his bruises, documented everything he said, and made several phone calls. The picture that emerged was heartbreaking. A child who'd lost everything, kicked out by a man who'd never wanted him in the first place. The good news, Helen said finally, is that Rick's actions constitute clear child abandonment and abuse. We can file for emergency removal of his custodial rights. The bad news is that the system is overwhelmed. The closest emergency foster placement available is 3 hours away, in a facility that's already over capacity. He's not going there, Daniel said. The words came out before he'd even consciously made the decision. Everyone turned to look at him, He can stay here, Daniel continued. At least temporarily until we find something better. I have space, I have resources, and that boy's been through enough without shipping him off to some overcrowded facility where he's just another case number. Patricia looked at him carefully. Daniel, are you sure? This isn't like fixing someone's car or paying for groceries. This is a child who'll need time, attention, probably therapy. This is. I know what it is, Daniel interrupted. I was a father, Patricia. I know what kids need. And right now, what Marcus needs is to not spend another night feeling unwanted. Helen studied him. Mr. Carter, I appreciate the offer, but there are procedures, background checks, home studies, training requirements. Then start them. Tonight, I'll do whatever paperwork you need, pass whatever inspections are required. But that boy is not going back out into the cold, and he's not going somewhere he'll just be a number. Not if I can help it. Marcus, who'd been silent through all this, spoke up quietly. Why would you do this? You don't even know me. Daniel looked at the boy, at his two old eyes and defensive posture, at the way he held himself like he was expecting the next blow to fall any second. Because 3 years ago, I lost my son, Daniel said softly. Tommy was 12. He and my wife Sarah were coming to pick me up from work when a truck ran a stop sign. I wasn't there when it happened. I didn't get to say goodbye. For 3 years, I've been living in this house that's too big, working in that workshop to keep my hands busy, existing but not really living. He paused, his voice thick. I can't bring Tommy back. I can't fix what happened to your mom. But I can make sure you're not alone. I can make sure you have a warm bed and hot meals and someone who gives a damn whether you're safe. Sometimes that's all we can do. Show up for the people who need us, even if they're strangers. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to be someone's charity case. You're not, Daniel said firmly. You'd be doing me a favor. This house has been too quiet for too long. And maybe we both need someone to show up for. Patricia wiped her eyes. Well, Helen, can we make this work? Helen looked at her tablet, making calculations. If Judge Morrison can expedite the emergency placement approval, and if Mr. Carter passes the preliminary background check, which I'm confident he will, given his standing in the community, we could have temporary custody arranged by tomorrow afternoon. It's highly irregular, but these are irregular circumstances, Patricia finished. Let me make some calls. By midnight, the paperwork was in motion. Marcus would stay with Daniel under Patricia's supervision for the next 72 hours while the emergency placement was finalized. Helen would return in the morning to begin the formal assessment process. Daniel made up the guest room, Tommy's old room. He'd kept it essentially unchanged, unable to pack away his son's things but unable to look at them too often either. Now he pulled fresh sheets onto the bed and set out clean towels. This was Tommy's room, Daniel said as Marcus stood in the doorway, still looking uncertain about all of this. You can change anything you want. Move things around, put up different posters, whatever makes it feel like yours. Marcus walked in slowly, taking in the model airplanes hanging from the ceiling, the bookshelf full of fantasy novels, the desk with a lamp shaped like a rocket ship. Was he cool? Marcus asked quietly. Your son. Daniel smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in days. He was the coolest. He wanted to be an aerospace engineer. Built those planes himself. Read 3 books a week. Made terrible jokes that only he thought were funny. His voice caught. He would have liked you, I think. You've got that same quiet strength he had. I'm not strong, Marcus said. Strong people don't end up homeless. Strong people survive things that should break them, Daniel corrected. You walked through a storm to find safety. You asked for help when you needed it. That takes more strength than you know. Marcus sat on the bed, running his hand over the blue comforter. What if Rick comes looking for me? What if he tries to take me back? He won't. And if he tries, he'll have to go through me, Patricia, Helen, and probably half the neighborhood. You're safe here, Marcus. I promise. That night, Daniel checked on Marcus 3 times. The first time, the boy was still awake, staring at the ceiling. The second time, he'd fallen asleep clutching his backpack like it might disappear. The third time, deep in the night, Daniel found Marcus having a nightmare. No, please. I'll be quiet. I promise. Please don't. Marcus was thrashing in his sleep. Marcus, wake up. You're safe. Wake up, son. Daniel gently touched his shoulder. Marcus jerked awake, wild-eyed and breathing hard. For a moment, he didn't seem to recognize where he was. Then his eyes focused on Daniel, and the panic subsided slightly. Sorry, Marcus gasped. Sorry, I didn't mean to. You have nothing to apologize for, Daniel said firmly. He sat on the edge of the bed. Bad dreams. Marcus nodded, pulling his knees to his chest. Want to talk about it? It was Rick. He found me and he was so angry, and Marcus's breath hitched. He's not coming here, Daniel said. And even if he tried, I wouldn't let him near you. You're under my protection now. Do you understand that? Marcus looked at him with eyes too old for his face. Why are you so nice to me? People aren't just nice. They always want something. Daniel thought carefully about his answer. I'm not going to lie to you, Marcus. When Tommy died, part of me died too. I've been going through the motions for 3 years, working and eating and sleeping but not really living. Tonight, when you knocked on my workshop door, something in me woke up. You reminded me that there's still purpose in this world. Still people who need help. Still good I can do. He met Marcus's eyes. So yeah, maybe I am getting something out of this. Maybe you're helping me as much as I'm helping you. But that doesn't make it transactional. That makes it human. We help each other. That's how we survive. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, so quietly Daniel almost missed it. Thank you. You're welcome, son. Now try to get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day, but it's going to be better than today. I promise. The next morning brought Helen Chong bright and early, clipboard in hand and a gentle smile on her face. She spent hours interviewing both Daniel and Marcus, taking notes, asking questions, assessing the situation from every angle. What she found surprised her. Daniel's background check came back spotless. More than spotless, it showed a man who'd been quietly helping his community for years. The mechanic at the corner garage talked about how Daniel fixed cars for single parents at cost. The principal at the local middle school mentioned the scholarship fund Daniel had set up in Tommy's name. The woman who ran the food bank described how Daniel volunteered every Saturday, never missing a week. Mr. Carter, Helen said as they sat in the living room while Marcus was in the kitchen making sandwiches. An activity Daniel had encouraged to help the boy feel useful rather than like a burden. In my 20 years as a social worker, I've rarely seen someone so universally respected in their community. Everyone I spoke to said the same thing. If there's anyone who should be helping this child, it's you. I'm just doing what anyone should do, Daniel said. But most people don't, Helen replied. That's what makes you different. She paused. I'm going to recommend immediate emergency foster placement with you as the guardian. Judge Morrison has already indicated she'll fast-track the approval. By end of business today, Marcus will officially be in your care. What about Rick? Rick Delaney has been arrested. When officers went to question him this morning about child abandonment, they found he was already packing to leave the state. He's facing multiple charges now. Child abuse, abandonment, possibly endangering a minor. He won't be bothering Marcus anymore. Relief flooded through Daniel. Good. There's one more thing, Helen said. Marcus told me this morning that he'd like to stay with you, not just temporarily. He asked if there was a way to make it permanent. Daniel's heart stuttered. Permanent? Like adoption? Eventually, yes. It's a long process, but given the circumstances, no other family, clear abandonment, and Marcus's stated preference, it's definitely possible. But that's a huge commitment, Mr. Carter. It would mean being a full-time parent again. School meetings, doctor's appointments, teenage years with all their complications. Are you prepared for that? Daniel looked toward the kitchen, where he could hear Marcus humming quietly as he made lunch. It was the first time he'd heard the boy make any sound that wasn't tinged with fear or sadness. Yes, Daniel said. I'm prepared. The first few weeks were an adjustment. Marcus was jumpy, apologizing for everything, asking permission for basic things like getting a glass of water or turning on the TV. He hoarded food in his room, a habit from times when Rick had withheld meals as punishment. He had nightmares almost every night, waking up terrified and disoriented. But slowly, incrementally, things began to change. Daniel enrolled Marcus in therapy with Dr. Lisa Henderson, a trauma specialist who worked with children. At first, Marcus was resistant, insisting he was fine. But Dr. Henderson had a way of making him feel heard rather than analyzed, and gradually he began to open up. School was harder. Marcus had missed a lot of classes in the chaotic weeks after his mother's death, and he was behind in almost every subject. Daniel hired a tutor, but more importantly, he sat with Marcus every evening, helping with homework, celebrating small victories, and making it clear that grades mattered less than effort. I'm stupid, Marcus said one night, frustrated with a math problem he couldn't solve. You're not stupid, Daniel corrected firmly. You're learning. There's a difference. Tommy struggled with math too. We worked through it together and eventually it clicked. Give yourself time. What if I never catch up? What if I'm too far behind? Then we'll work together until you do catch up. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus. Neither is the homework, unfortunately. He smiled. But we'll figure it out. That's what families do. The word family made Marcus look up sharply. Is that what we are? A family? Daniel chose his words carefully. I think we're becoming one. Family isn't just about blood or paperwork. It's about showing up for each other. About being there on the hard days and the good ones. What do you think? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, I think I'd like that. 3 months into their arrangement, Daniel was officially approved as Marcus's foster parent with the intention to adopt once the legal process was complete. The house, which had felt like a mausoleum for 3 years, began to feel like a home again. Marcus joined the school's robotics club and discovered he had a talent for engineering, just like Tommy had. Daniel taught him how to use the tools in the workshop, and soon they were working on projects together, father and son in all but name. The nightmares became less frequent. The hoarding stopped. Marcus started to relax, to trust that food would always be available, that he wouldn't be kicked out for making a mistake, that Daniel wasn't going to suddenly decide he was too much trouble. But old wounds run deep, and there were still hard days. 6 months in, Marcus came home from school with a black eye and split lip. Daniel found him in the bathroom, trying to clean himself up before Daniel could see. "What happened?" Daniel asked, keeping his voice calm even as his heart raced. "Nothing. I'm fine." "Marcus, what happened?" The boy's shoulders sagged. "Some kids at school. They were making fun of me, calling me the charity case, saying you only took me in to make yourself feel better about losing your real son, saying I was just a replacement and not even a good one." Daniel felt that familiar rage building, but he forced it down. "What did you do?" "I told them to shut up. They didn't. One of them said Tommy was probably glad he died, so he didn't have to live with a failure like me. So I punched him. And then his friends jumped in and I fought back. And the principal called you, but you were in a meeting, so they called Patricia instead." Marcus looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. I know fighting is wrong. I know I'm probably going to get suspended. I know I screwed up. Are you going to send me back?" "Send you back?" Daniel was genuinely shocked. "Marcus, why would I?" "Because I'm trouble. Because I got in a fight. Because maybe those kids were right and you did just take me in to feel better about Tommy. And now you realize I'm not worth it. Stop." Daniel's voice was firm but gentle. He pulled Marcus into a hug, feeling the boy's thin frame shake with sobs. "Listen to me. You are not going anywhere. Not for a fight, not for failing a test, not for making mistakes. That's not how family works. But what if I'm not good enough? What if I can't be Tommy?" Daniel pulled back, looking Marcus in the eyes. "I don't want you to be Tommy. Tommy was my son, and I'll love him until the day I die. But you're not a replacement. You're Marcus. You're funny and smart and stubborn and kind. You're learning to trust again after people broke that trust. You're surviving trauma that would break most adults. And you're my son too. Different from Tommy, but no less important. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded, still crying. "I'm sorry I fought. I know. And we'll talk about better ways to handle situations like that. But Marcus, those kids were wrong. You're not a charity case. You're not a replacement. You're my son. And I chose you just as much as you chose me. That makes us family. Real family." The adoption was finalized on a crisp April morning, 9 months after Marcus had knocked on Daniel's workshop door. Judge Morrison, who'd been involved from the beginning, personally presided over the hearing. "This court has reviewed the case thoroughly," she said, though everyone present could see the tears in her eyes. "The transformation we've witnessed in both Marcus Webb and Daniel Carter has been remarkable. A child who'd lost everything found not just shelter, but a home. A man who'd lost his way found not just purpose, but family." She looked at Marcus, who sat between Daniel and Patricia, wearing the new suit Daniel had bought for the occasion. "Marcus, do you understand what adoption means?" "Yes, ma'am. It means Mr. Carter. It means Dad becomes my father officially. It means I'm Marcus Carter, and nobody can take me away from my family. And is that what you want? More than anything." Judge Morrison turned to Daniel. "Mr. Carter, do you understand the permanent, lifelong commitment you're making?" "I do, Your Honor, and I'm honored to make it. Then by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. Marcus Webb is now legally Marcus Carter, with all the rights and responsibilities thereof. Congratulations to the new Carter family." The courtroom, packed with neighbors, teachers, Dr. Henderson, Helen Chong, and dozens of people whose lives had been touched by either Daniel or Marcus erupted in applause. Patricia was crying. Helen was crying. Even the court reporter was wiping her eyes. But Daniel was focused on Marcus, who'd thrown his arms around Daniel's waist and was holding on like he'd never let go. "You're stuck with me now," Marcus said, his voice muffled against Daniel's suit jacket. "Best decision I ever made," Daniel replied, his voice thick. "Welcome home, son." That evening they had a celebration at the house. Not a big party. Marcus still wasn't comfortable with crowds, but an intimate gathering of the people who'd made this possible. Patricia and Helen, Dr. Henderson, Marcus's favorite teacher Mrs. Rodriguez, and a few close neighbors. As Daniel watched Marcus laugh at something Patricia said, as he saw the boy reach for a cookie without first asking permission, as he noticed how Marcus had finally stopped looking over his shoulder expecting something bad to happen, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Peace. Not the absence of pain. He still missed Sarah and Tommy every day, but a sense that life could move forward. That love wasn't a finite resource that ran out when tragedy struck. That family could be built, not just born. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Marcus had gone to bed, Daniel sat in the workshop, the place where it had all started. The storm had long since passed, but he could still remember that moment when he'd opened the door to find a frightened child asking for the bare minimum of shelter. He thought about how easy it would have been to say no, to call the authorities and wash his hands of the situation, to decide it wasn't his problem. But then he wouldn't have these 9 months of watching Marcus heal. He wouldn't have morning conversations over breakfast, or homework struggles that ended in breakthroughs, or the quiet contentment of having someone to care for again. He wouldn't have a son who called him Dad and meant it. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, who was supposed to be asleep. "Dad, can you check my room? I thought I heard something." Daniel smiled. The nightmares had mostly stopped, but occasionally Marcus still needed reassurance. He headed upstairs, knowing he'd find Marcus sitting up in bed, probably not having heard anything at all, just needing to confirm that Daniel was still there. "Hey," Daniel said softly, entering the room. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Marcus said. "I just wanted to make sure you were still here." "I'm still here. I'll always be here. Promise." "I promise. Now lie down. School tomorrow." Marcus lay back down, but he looked thoughtful. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything. Do you think Mom can see me?" "From wherever she is." Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. "I like to think she can. I hope she knows I'm okay now. I hope she knows she doesn't have to worry anymore. I think she knows. And I think she's grateful that you found your way here, that you were brave enough to ask for help when you needed it." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm glad I knocked on your door that night. I almost didn't. I almost just kept walking." "What made you stop?" "The light was on, and I was so cold and so tired, and I thought maybe someone who leaves their light on in a storm might be someone who wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of warmth." "I was right." Daniel's throat tightened. "Get some sleep, son. I love you." "Love you too, Dad." As Daniel turned off the light and headed downstairs, he thought about that moment 9 months ago. How a simple decision to open a door had changed 2 lives completely. The workshop light was still on, casting its warm glow into the darkness. Daniel decided to leave it on, just in case someone else needed to find their way home. Marcus Carter, now 12 years old, stood in front of his 8th grade class giving a presentation. The assignment was to talk about someone who'd changed your life. Most kids had chosen athletes or celebrities. Marcus had chosen his dad. 2 years ago, I had nothing, he began. His voice steady and confident in a way it hadn't been when he'd first arrived at Daniel's door. I was cold, scared, and convinced I didn't deserve anything better than a corner in someone's garage. He clicked to the next slide, showing a picture of Daniel's workshop, that same light glowing in the window. But I saw a light on in a storm, and I made a choice to be brave enough to ask for help. The man who opened that door didn't just give me shelter. He gave me a family. He gave me a future. He gave me proof that the world still has good people in it. Another slide. Daniel and Marcus working together in the workshop, both grinning at the camera. My dad taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about being there on the hard days. It's about loving someone not because you have to, but because you choose to. Final slide. Their adoption day, Marcus and Daniel with their arms around each other, both of them crying happy tears. I lost my mom. I lost my home. I lost my faith in people. But then I found my dad, and he helped me find all of those things again. In different forms, maybe, but in ways that are real and lasting. Marcus looked out at his classmates, many of whom had heard parts of his story but never all of it. So yeah, my life changed because of one person, but also because I was brave enough to knock on a door and ask for help. Sometimes that's all it takes. Someone brave enough to ask, and someone kind enough to answer. If you're ever in trouble, I hope you find your light in the storm. And if you ever see someone who needs help, I hope you're brave enough to be that light for them. The class gave him a standing ovation. His teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was crying. And in the back of the room, Daniel Carter stood with tears streaming down his face, more proud than he'd ever thought possible. After class, as they walked to the car together, Marcus was quiet. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "Yeah, just thinking. About how lucky I am. Not everyone who knocks on a door finds what I found." Daniel stopped walking, turning to face his son. "You're right. Not everyone gets lucky. That's why we started the foundation, remember? To help other kids find their way home." The Carter Foundation for Youth in Crisis had been established 6 months ago, funded partly by Daniel's savings and partly by community donations. It provided emergency shelter, counseling, and long-term support for kids aging out of foster care or facing homelessness. So far, they'd helped 17 children find stable placements. 3 had been adopted by families who'd been inspired by Marcus's story. "I want to do more," Marcus said. "When I'm older, I want to be a social worker. Like Helen. I want to help kids like me." "You'll be amazing at it," Daniel said. "You already are. Every time you share your story, you give someone else hope." Marcus smiled, the genuine, unguarded smile of a kid who finally felt safe. "That's what you gave me that night. Hope. When I thought there was none left." "You gave me something too," Daniel said. "You reminded me that life goes on, that love doesn't run out, that family can be found in the most unexpected places." They climbed into the car, both of them content in the comfortable silence that comes from really knowing someone. As they pulled out of the school parking lot, Marcus noticed the light was on in Daniel's workshop, visible even in the afternoon sun. "You left the light on again," he said. "I know," Daniel replied. "I always do now, just in case. Just in case someone needs to find their way home?" "Exactly." Marcus nodded, understanding, because he'd been that someone once. And now, thanks to a man who'd left his light on in a storm, he was home. Really, truly home. And he'd never take that for granted again. Sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to ask for help and one person kind enough to answer. Sometimes the smallest act of compassion, leaving a light on, opening a door, offering warmth, can change everything. We all have the power to be that light for someone else. The question is, will we?